Hello, I'm Anna Maria Tremonti, and you're listening to The Current. But first, the battle commences between some of Canada's veterans and their own government.
Mr. Speaker, I absolutely regret yesterday's events, and as I did last evening, I apologize directly to the veterans, and again, I apologize now.
Well, that is the Veteran Affairs Minister, Julian Fantino, speaking in late January, apologizing for not showing and then arriving late and walking out of a meeting with a group of Canada's veterans. Among other complaints, the vets are angry about the closing of 9 Veterans Affairs Canada offices. Some say they will no longer support the Conservative Party and will actively work to defeat it in the next election. It isn't clear how widespread this anger is, but Canada's former soldiers seem an unlikely group for the Conservatives to annoy. Aaron O'Toole is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Durham, Ontario. He's a Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade. He was a commissioned officer with the Royal Canadian Air Force. Aaron O'Toole joins me from Ottawa. Hello.
Good morning.
How much responsibility does the government bear for this rift that appears to have arisen between it and some veterans?
I think a misunderstanding or feelings are hurt or, communication not going well. Both sides, including the government, has some of the blame for this. And as a veteran myself, and our caucus has more veterans than all the other parties combined in it, we're disappointed because we actually have been modernizing and improving veteran care in Canada. And I never like talking numbers, Anna Maria, but if you look at the numbers as well, we're making record investments, and we're just doing it in new ways to try and serve both our traditional veterans from World War II and Korea, as well as our young men and women from Afghanistan.
And yet a number of veterans say the decision to shut down Veteran Affairs offices was the act of an uncaring government. What are you hearing about that decision?
Well, I've spoken with the veterans that came to Ottawa in January. They came actually last October, Anna Maria, when the campaign was launched. And it's important to mention the campaign is a Peace Act-driven campaign. That's their position as a union. They have to advocate. But I've been speaking personally with those veterans since last October about our changes. And in fact, we took the feedback from some of those veterans that came in October that said they wanted to make sure that in Sydney, for example, the expertise of a trained, experienced caseworker, veteran caseworker, went to the Service Canada office. And we listened. We actually changed the program in December. Minister Fantino made the change directly after I reported to him on their comments. So if you look at those 8 offices that closed a couple of weeks ago, Anna Maria, in 5 of the 8 cities, there will be a trained veteran caseworker, maybe one of the people these veterans went to, in the same building. In 2 other cases, they're just down the street, and in Thunder Bay, one is 4 kilometers away. And as a veteran, I think it's appropriate because those offices had less than 10 people in them a day generally, and mainly to return forms. So now that same level of administrative support is available in all of those cities, those 8 cities, sometimes in the same building. But now, if we do this properly, the network of Service Canada offices, 600, will now have a basic level of veterans administrative support that they didn't have before. So my area of Ontario, the Durham region, which is larger than most of the other cities for the closures, which has never had a Veterans Affairs office, will now have support through 4 or 5 Service Canada offices.
But you say a trained veteran caseworker with whom they have dealt. We're talking about people with PTSD. We're talking about people with very severe issues. And they get used to one caseworker. Are you saying some of those caseworkers will disappear?
I'm glad you raised that specific issue, Anna Maria, because I've learned through this conversation and the passions that have bubbled through it is a lot of Canadians think that counseling and treatment is administered at these veteran centers, and that's not the case. These are administrative support centers. People have called them points of contact. That's what they are. They don't deliver counseling for PTSD or an operational stress injury. They help the veteran access care. So they help with a referral to a mental health professional. What we are doing, and as a veteran, I think this is important, if the federal government is opening offices around the country, I don't think they should be administrative in this day and age. They should be delivering care. So we've actually now have a network of 17 operational stress injury clinics to address mental health on the ground in communities where veterans live after they serve. So that's a rising need. We've seen the mental health challenges that are out there. Our government has been responding. So we're spending money in different ways, in new ways. We're opening new things, and we're evolving from a system that was really structured from decades ago when the federal government didn't have a presence across the country other than the post office. Now there's Service Canada. Now there's the Legion, which still visits more veterans at home than anyone else. There are the online, 15,000 veterans have signed up for the MyVac account, and the budget yesterday has put some more money towards improving those services.
Okay, well, let me just ask you a few other questions, though. Both you mentioned PSAC. Both you and the Veterans Affairs Minister, Julian Fantino, have accused the Public Service Alliance of Canada of manipulating this issue and the veterans for its own ends. Are you saying veterans aren't capable of assessing the real impact that these closures will have on them?
I've never said they've manipulated or any of this, and I've read it. What I've said the union has done is they have enlisted an ally, in this case the veterans, many of whom have valid concerns. And I spoke to Mr. Clark, the veteran from Sydney who was quite vocal last October about these issues, and we made changes based on his feedback. They have the best ally in their discussion with the government on this issue because all Canadians have a lot of respect, and we've got to do as much as we can for our veterans. But at the same time, this has been a very coordinated campaign and part of one of several issues that the federal government is in conversation with PSAC on at the moment. And the veterans' concerns are absolutely valid. What I've tried to do as an MP that's also a veteran is to explain the rationale for the changes and to sort of show we're trying to meet the need now, but also in the future.
But if they're valid, then why are you you're saying it's a PSAC-driven campaign as if that somehow makes their complaints less important?
Well, I think it's important to understand the context of it. So, last fall, many of those veterans came to the Hill. The day planned by PSAC, most of it around press and media work. And it was the same. So the confrontation that happened with the minister a few weeks ago came amid a day that was started with a press conference, ended with a press conference. I met with them again. I've called, one of the veterans at home previously to talk issues. I think in the circumstances of an active campaign run by the union like that, the emotions run high, and we don't have a really rational discussion of the issues.
Oh, yeah, okay, but the emotions ran high because the minister didn't show up. And then they had an argument with the minister after. You're blaming the union for that?
Well, I was in the room when the minister was running late, Anne-Maria, and the Veterans Affairs Minister staff came in and said he's running late, he's in cabinet, but can he buy you dinner? Can he meet and talk over dinner? The veterans were on a tight schedule. They had a press conference and they had a meet and greet later that night with PSAC, and I was disappointed because I think there would have been a great opportunity for some FaceTime over dinner. But like I said, the pressure around the overall campaign has led to a sort of lack of positive dialogue, which is why I'm glad you're covering the subject and why I'm trying to talk about it as an MP and as a veteran.
Okay. Aaron O'Toole, thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron O'Toole was a commissioned officer with the Royal Canadian Air Force. He's the Conservative Member of Parliament for Durham, Ontario, and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.